The hollow echo. The Kapoor recording studios gleamed in the afternoon sun, a glass and steel monument to musical success that towered over the bustling streets of Mumbai. Inside, 23-year-old Prisha Desai adjusted levels on the mixing board, her deft fingers dancing across sliders and knobs with practiced precision. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, stray tendrils framing her face as she leaned forward, eyes closed, listening intently. "Perfect," she murmured, opening her eyes to catch the approving nod from the artist on the other side of the glass. Though just a junior sound engineer, Prisha had earned a reputation for her exceptional ear and musical intuition. "Ms. Desai," called a clipped voice from the doorway. Jaya, the studio manager, stood with her tablet clutched to her chest. "Mr. Kapoor wants to see all staff in the main hall. Immediately." Prisha's stomach tightened. Rajiv Kapoor, the imposing patriarch of the Kapoor music empire, rarely addressed the staff directly. His appearances usually preceded major changes, or terminations. The main hall buzzed with nervous energy as employees gathered. Rajiv Kapoor stood at the center, his elegant wife Sunaina beside him, her jewelry catching the light with every subtle movement. "My son, Vihan, is returning from New York tomorrow," Rajiv announced without preamble. "As many of you know, he was involved in an accident 6 months ago that resulted in profound hearing loss." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Vihan Kapoor, 30-year-old musical prodigy and heir to the Kapoor empire, deaf. The irony was almost cruel. "He will be taking over management of the Eastern Wing Studios," Rajiv continued, his tone brooking no argument. "You will accommodate his needs without drawing attention to his condition. That is all." As the crowd dispersed, Prisha remained rooted to the spot. The Eastern Wing, her wing. She would be working directly under a man who couldn't hear. "Worried about your position?" Amit, a senior engineer, smirked as he passed. "Better brush up on your sign language." Prisha ignored him, her mind already racing with questions and possibilities. The next morning, Prisha arrived early, determined to organize her studio before her new boss arrived. She was adjusting the acoustic panels when a tall figure appeared in the doorway. Vihan Kapoor was thinner than in the magazine photos, his once vibrant face now marked by shadows beneath sharp cheekbones. His eyes, though, those remained intense, observant, as if trying to hear through sight alone. He didn't notice her at first, running his fingertips along the wall as he entered, feeling the texture of the space. When he finally saw her, he stiffened. "Hello," Prisha said, then immediately felt foolish. She awkwardly raised her hand in greeting instead. Vihan nodded curtly and moved to the mixing board, his fingers ghosting over the equipment with obvious familiarity and longing. Prisha watched as he pressed his palm flat against one of the speakers. Impulsively, she moved to the computer and pulled up a track, one of her own compositions, a piece with deep, resonant bass lines. She hit play and increased the volume. Vihan's eyes widened. His hand pressed harder against the speaker, feeling the vibrations pulse through the wood and into his skin. For just a moment, his severe expression softened. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the vulnerability vanished. He straightened, wrote something on his phone, and held it up to her. "Who authorized you to be in this studio?" Prisha swallowed hard and typed her response. "I'm your sound engineer. My name is Prisha Desai." His eyes narrowed as he studied her, then he typed again. "I don't need an engineer. I need silence." He turned and left without waiting for her response, leaving Prisha alone with the throbbing bass notes that filled a room suddenly too large and too empty. Vibrations of trust 2 weeks had passed since Vihan Kapoor's return, and Prisha found herself in an increasingly frustrating situation. Each morning, she arrived at the studio to find Vihan already there, sitting motionless before the equipment he could no longer use in the conventional way. Each day, he acknowledged her presence with nothing more than a curt nod before returning to his silent contemplation. Today, however, was different. As Prisha entered, she found him holding a violin, his fingers tracing the curves of the instrument, with something like reverence. Without thinking, she approached and gently took it from his hands. His eyes flashed with anger, but before he could protest, she placed the violin against his chest, positioning his hand on the wooden body. "Feel it," she mouthed, knowing he could read lips at least partially. She began to play, a simple melody that grew in complexity. Vihan's expression transformed from skepticism to wonder as the vibrations traveled through the wood into his body. When she finished, he didn't move for several seconds. His eyes closed as if holding on to the last remnants of sound. "I can feel the different notes," he typed on his phone, showing it to her. "The higher ones are sharper, the lower ones spread through my chest." Prisha smiled, excitement building. She pulled out her tablet and typed, "I have an idea." Over the next few days, they developed a system. Prisha installed specialized vibration pads throughout the studio that translated sound into tactile sensations. She created a color-coded visualization system that displayed the music's emotional qualities and rhythmic patterns on a large screen. Most importantly, she found ways to help Vihan feel the music directly, placing his hands on instruments, adjusting frequencies to create vibrations he could sense through different parts of his body. "It's like learning a new language," Vihan admitted one evening as they worked late. "I used to think in melodies and harmonies. Now I think in vibrations and colors." Prisha nodded, understanding completely. Music had always been her language, too. Though she kept her own compositions private, hidden away on a personal drive she never shared. "Why are you helping me like this?" he typed, his expression guarded but curious. "My father must be paying you well?" Prisha's cheeks flushed with indignation. She typed quickly, "I'm doing this because music matters, because it should be accessible to everyone, not for money." Vihan studied her face, then slowly nodded. "Show me what you're working on now." Hesitantly, Prisha pulled up one of the studio's current projects, a film score that had been giving the team trouble. As the music played, she adjusted the vibration pads and visual display. Vihan closed his eyes, feeling the composition flow through him. When it ended, he immediately moved to the keyboard connected to the computer. His fingers hovered uncertainly for a moment before he began typing, altering the arrangement. Prisha watched in amazement as he restructured the troublesome sections, somehow finding precisely what had been missing. "How did you do that?" She typed, staring at him in wonder. "When you lose one sense, the others compensate," he replied. "I can feel the imbalance in the composition, like a room where the furniture is arranged wrong." That night, as they worked side by side, adjusting tracks and feeling the music together, something shifted between them. The silence that had once seemed like a barrier now felt like a shared space, filled with understanding that transcended words. As Prisha was packing up to leave, Vihan touched her arm lightly. "Tomorrow," he typed. "Bring something you've composed," her heart stuttered. "How did you know I compose?" His smile was small but genuine. "Your eyes? When you listen to music, they move as if you're mentally rearranging notes. Only a composer does that." Prisha left the studio that night with her heart racing, clutching her bag with the flash drive containing her most personal compositions. For the first time since his return, she found herself looking forward to seeing Vihan Kapoor the next day. Unknown to both of them, Sunaina Kapoor watched from the hallway, her eyes narrowing as she observed their easy interaction. She pulled out her phone and made a call. "Rajiv," she said quietly, "I think we have a problem with that sound engineer girl. She's getting too close to Vihan." Resonance of Heart's morning sunlight streamed through the studio windows as Prisha connected her flash drive to the computer. Her hands trembled slightly as she scrolled through years of private compositions, pieces of her soul translated into melodies and rhythms. This one, she typed, selecting a piece she'd composed during her grandmother's illness 3 years ago. It's called Monsoon Memories. Vihan positioned himself near the vibration pads, his palms flat against the specially designed surface. Prisha started the track, watching his face intently as her composition filled the room. The piece began, softly, raindrops on a tin roof, gradually building into the powerful sweep of monsoon winds and thundering skies, before settling into a gentle, cleansing aftermath. It was grief and hope intertwined, a musical journey through loss and renewal. When it ended, Vihan remained motionless, eyes closed. Finally, he looked up, his expression transformed. He moved to the computer and typed rapidly. "This isn't just good, it's extraordinary. Why aren't you producing music instead of engineering other people's work?" Prisha shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. No connections, no money, the usual story. "Play another?" he requested, his eyes bright with genuine interest. Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm of collaboration that transcended conventional communication. During the day, they worked on official studio projects. In the evenings, they explored Prisha's compositions, with Vihan offering suggestions through a combination of typing, gestures, and their increasingly intuitive understanding. Using a Bayachi, specialized program Prisha developed, Vihan began composing again, creating music through vibration patterns and visual representations that she then translated into traditional notation. Together, they created pieces that were unlike anything either had produced before, music born from the space between sound and silence. "We should present these to my father," Vihan typed one evening after they'd completed a particularly powerful composition. Prisha's stomach tightened with anxiety. "These are experiments your family wouldn't understand." "My family understands success," Vihan replied. "And this is successful music." Before she could protest further, the studio door opened. Sunaina Kapoor entered, her silk sari rustling as she moved, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists. "Working late again, Beta?" she asked Vihan, deliberately speaking aloud despite his condition, her eyes sliding dismissively over Prisha. Vihan nodded, gesturing to the equipment with evident enthusiasm. "Your father and I are concerned," Sunaina continued, now typing on her phone and showing it to him. "You're spending too much time isolated here. Divya Sharma's family has invited us to dinner tomorrow. You remember Divya? She's completed her business degree at Harvard." Vihan's expression closed, his earlier animation fading. He typed a brief response that made his mother's lips thin with displeasure. "This is not a request," she said aloud, her voice sharp. Then, turning to Prisha, "You may go now. My son and I need to discuss family matters." Prisha gathered her things quickly, avoiding Vihan's eyes. As she reached the door, she heard Sunaina's voice, deliberately loud enough for her to hear. "She's an employee, Vihan. Nothing more. Don't confuse gratitude with something inappropriate." That night, unable to sleep, Prisha returned to the empty studio. She sat at the mixing board, letting her fingers trail over the equipment that had become like an extension of herself. On impulse, she pulled up their latest joint composition and made a few adjustments, adding depth to certain passages, enhancing the vibration patterns they'd designed together. She didn't hear the door open, didn't realize Rajiv Kapoor had entered, until he spoke directly behind her. "Impressive work," he said, making her jump. "My wife thinks you're distracting my son. I'm beginning to wonder if she's right, but not in the way she imagines." Prisha stood quickly. "Sir, He raised a hand, silencing her. "Tell me, Ms. Desai, these compositions you've been working on with Vihan, whose ideas are they, really? Because my son lost more than his hearing in New York. He lost his confidence, his musical identity." Prisha lifted her chin. We create them together. Your son hasn't lost his musical gift. He's finding new ways to express it. Rajiv studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. We're hosting a gathering next weekend. Important people from the industry. Be prepared to demonstrate this collaboration. After he left, Prisha sank back into her chair, heart pounding. Something in his tone suggested that the demonstration would be less about showcasing their work and more about proving whose work it truly was. Dissonant truths, the Kapoor mansion glittered under the evening sky, transformed for the industry gathering. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors, while servers in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne and canapes. Mumbai's music elite mingled in the grand salon, their conversations creating a buzz of anticipation. Prisha stood near the back, feeling conspicuously out of place in her one good dress, a midnight blue silk she'd saved for months to purchase. She clutched a small flash drive containing their collaborative works, watching as Vihan moved through the crowd with practiced ease. Despite his disability, he navigated social interactions with the confidence of someone born to privilege, occasionally using a text-to-speech app on his phone when lip reading proved insufficient. "There you are," came a voice beside her. Jaya, the studio manager, appeared with 2 glasses of champagne, offering one to Prisha. "Nervous?" "Terrified," Prisha admitted. "This isn't my world." "It could be," Jaya said thoughtfully, "if tonight goes well." Before Prisha could respond, Rajiv Kapoor commanded the room's attention, standing beside an elegant grand piano. "Friends, colleagues, distinguished guests," he began. "Many of you know of my son's unfortunate accident. What you may not know is that Vihan has been working on something extraordinary, a new approach to composition that transcends traditional limitations." Vihan moved forward, his face composed, but his hands, Prisha noticed, clenched slightly. At his sides, a telltale sign of his nervousness that only she would recognize. "Tonight," Rajiv continued, "we'll demonstrate this breakthrough. Ms. Prisha Desai, one of our studio engineers, has been assisting Vihan in this project." Prisha stepped forward on cue, conscious of the evaluating glances from the assembled guests. She connected the flash drive to the sophisticated sound system and pulled up their most recent composition, a piece they'd titled Silent Symphony. As the music filled the room, screens displayed the visual representation system they'd developed, colors flowing and pulsing with the rhythm, shapes morphing with harmonic changes. Vihan stood with his hand against a specially designed vibration panel, his expression one of complete immersion. The audience watched in fascinated silence. When the piece concluded, there was a moment of stunned quiet before applause erupted. Industry veterans approached Vihan, their faces alight with interest and admiration. Prisha stood back, a small, proud smile on her face. This was his moment. Deserved. Recognition for his courage in finding a new musical language. She was turning to slip away when Sunaina Kapoor intercepted her. "A remarkable achievement," Sunaina said, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold. "Tell me, how much of this is actually my son's work?" "All of it," Prisha replied firmly. "I just helped translate his vision." "Is that so?" Sunaina's smile tightened. "Because we had some of our senior engineers analyze the compositions. They found striking similarities to pieces from a flash drive in the studio archives, compositions dating back years before Vihan's accident. Compositions created by you." Prisha's blood ran cold. "That's not possible. Those were private." "Nothing is private in our studios," Sunaina cut in. "Rajiv built this company by knowing everything that happens under his roof." Before Prisha could defend herself, Vihan approached, his expression questioning as he sensed the tension between them. Sunaina immediately turned to him, typing rapidly on her phone. Prisha watched Vihan's face transform as he read, confusion giving way to disbelief, then hardening into something like betrayal. He looked up at Prisha, his eyes demanding explanation. "It's not what you think," she began, reaching for her own phone to type a response, but Vihan had already turned away, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. Prisha moved to follow, but Rajiv Kapoor blocked her path. "I think it's best if you leave now, Ms. Desai," he said quietly. "Your services are no longer required at Kapoor Studios." That night, locked out of the building that had been her creative home, Prisha stood in the rain watching lights go out one by one. She had lost more than a job. She had lost a connection that had begun to feel essential, a partnership that had awakened something dormant in her music and in her heart. She didn't know that Vihan was watching her from an upstairs window, his own heart torn between anger at what felt like deception and a desperate desire to understand why the only person who had truly reached him in his silence would betray him so completely. Symphony of second chances 8 months later, Prisha adjusted the threadbare curtains in her grandmother's small home in Goa. The modest house, perched on a hill overlooking the Arabian Sea, was worlds away from the gleaming studios of Mumbai. She had returned here after her dismissal, finding solace in caring for her aging grandmother and teaching music to local children. She was preparing for her afternoon class when her phone chimed with a news alert, a habit she hadn't broken despite her self-imposed exile from the industry. The headline made her breath catch. Vihan Kapoor regains partial hearing after groundbreaking surgery. The article detailed the experimental procedure Vihan had undergone in Switzerland, allowing him to perceive a limited range of sounds. There was a photo of him leaving the hospital, his face thinner but his eyes alight with something that looked like hope. "Good news comes your way," her grandmother observed, noticing Prisha's expression as she shuffled into the room, leaning on her walking stick. "Someone I used to know," Prisha explained, setting her phone aside. "He's recovering from an injury." Her grandmother's eyes, wise despite her fading vision, studied her face. "This someone is the reason my talented granddaughter came home with music still inside her, but no voice to sing it." Prisha managed a small smile. "It's complicated, Nani." "Life always is," her grandmother replied. "But music isn't. It speaks truth when words fail." Later that afternoon, as raindrops began to patter against the tin roof of the community center where she taught, Prisha guided her students through a simple composition she'd written for them. The children played with enthusiastic, if imperfect, technique, their faces serious with concentration. So absorbed was she in their performance that she didn't notice the figure standing in the doorway until the piece concluded and one of her students pointed. "Teacher, someone is watching." Prisha turned, and the world seemed to still. Vihan Kapoor stood there, rain-dampened and travel-worn, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart stutter. "Class dismissed early today," she managed to say, her voice barely steady. As the children gathered their things, chattering excitedly about the unexpected visitor, Prisha remained rooted to the spot. When they were alone, Vihan stepped forward, pulling a small device from his pocket, an assistive hearing aid. "I can hear some things now," he said, his voice rusty from disuse but clear enough. "Not everything, not perfectly, but enough." Prisha nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "I found your compositions," he continued. "All of them. I spent months listening to them after the surgery." "How did you find me?" she finally asked. "Your students. They posted videos of their classes online. I recognized your teaching style, the way you tap rhythms on the table, the hand signals for dynamics." A small smile touched his lips. "The same methods you used to teach me." He moved closer, placing a flash drive in her hand. "This is our new album, Silent Symphony, officially released next month under both our names." Prisha stared at the small device. "But your parents—" No longer make my decisions, Vihan interrupted. The surgery gave me back some hearing, but you gave me back music. I had to choose what mattered more, family approval or artistic integrity. Rain drummed harder on the roof, creating a percussive backdrop to their reunion. I owe you an apology, Vihan said. I believed what they told me about you using me to promote your music. It took losing you to realize you weren't using me at all. You were reaching me in the only way that could get through. He hesitated, then added, I've started a new studio, smaller than Kapoor Records, more innovative. I need a partner who understands that music isn't just what we hear. It's what we feel. Outside, the rain began to ease, sunlight breaking through clouds to create a shimmering curtain of light over the sea. I don't know, Prisha said honestly. I've found something meaningful here too. Vihan nodded, respecting her hesitation. Then let me stay a while. Learn what you've built here. Maybe we can create something new together. Something that bridges both worlds. As if on cue, one of her young students peeked around the doorway, violin clutched in small hands. Teacher Prisha? I think I figured out that difficult passage. Prisha smiled, gesturing for the child to enter. Show us, she said, glancing at Vihan. Both of us. As the child played, Vihan closed his eyes, listening with both his imperfect hearing and the deeper understanding Prisha had taught him. Feeling the music's vibrations, its emotional resonance, its unspoken truth. The simple melody filled the room, connecting three souls in that moment of perfect understanding. A composer who had found her voice, a musician who had rediscovered his, and a child just beginning to discover the language that had brought them together. Outside, the rain stopped completely, and the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for whatever symphony would come next.